Hello, Slate. Hello, Pooty. As you can tell, we're testing some new mic settings today, so hopefully it sounds a little bit better. I did some test recordings, but we'll find out. Let me know. Thumbs up or thumbs down if you don't like it or if you like it. Because I was listening to some of the recordings before, and it actually sounded like pretty echoey and shallow and all that kind of stuff, so I tried to avoid it a little bit. But hello, Galazar. Good to see ya. Good to see ya. Hope you're all doing well. We're gonna switch on over. I was just making some notes here. Just making some notes in preparation for the portfolio review. What, you want to say hi as well? I'm here, joined with Nacho. He's not going to be on cam today, but yeah. He's sitting right underneath the desk. That's where his favorite spot is. And he was sleeping so peacefully until just now, until I started streaming. Am I making too much noise? Huh? But yeah, the plan for today is it's actually going to be a shorter stream this day because I have a lot of work to do. Honestly, that's just what it's come down to. I have to do a bunch of recordings still. I need to make sure that we are on track with the course, right? I am doing a bunch of editing for one of our Flowers courses, so I'm really focused on that. So I think today we're just gonna chill, chat a little bit, get into some portfolio reviews, and then I'm probably gonna cut it short after that. But yeah, we are definitely gonna look into some portfolio reviews. So yeah, we're still gonna be doing that. What's up? What's up? What's up? Why are you wagging your tail, huh? I swear there's a dog below the desk. I'm not just petting air. Hello, 3D Ben. Good to see you. Welcome to the stream. Hope you're doing well. Hello, Sheila. Good to see you. Yeah, buddy. I know. You want to go? You want to go? You don't want to go? Okay. No? Okay. You're staying with me then. Let's do the final thing here and then get into it. Right. Judy is saying, woke up today with the Bluepoint news. Yeah, we were actually chatting about that in the community chat as well. First of all, it's freaking rough, right? Like, it's always a rough day when people like lose their job. And I think, so this is also coming from a person who's never really played the games, right? Because they were like a Sony studio. I don't have a PlayStation, all that kind of stuff. But I really... Even I, not having played the games, like really was astounded by like how good their like remakes were from Dark Souls, for example. That was like really impressive. Like the quality that they just brought to the table by remaining authentic, and then like, yeah, building stuff on top of it was really cool to see. So it's a shame. But I also mentioned in the community chat that this is, oh sorry, Demon's Souls. Yeah, Demon's Souls, Dark Souls. See, I have no clue when I'm talking about like those games. But yeah, we also did talk about this in the Whip Wednesday chat about the movements of the industry, right? Where a lot of... First of all, there's a lot more outsourcing code development happening, right? Which is the reason why Sony bought up Bluepoint and all that kind of stuff in the first place, right? Because they saw the need. However, there is so much financial pressure onto the entire industry now that having a... I don't know, like that's the only thing that I can see. Like having a company like that in a location that is, I think, Austin, Texas, I think, if I'm not mistaken. It is just like really expensive to run it, right? Even when it was only like 70 people, I mean, that's still like a sizable portion that you have to then pay out and all that kind of stuff, right? And it's weird because the quality is there, you know, the talent is there, like all that kind of stuff. But the only thing that I can see that makes sense is that it was just like too expensive for the business people to continue to run it as they did and just move it somewhere else that's cheaper, you know? I don't know. That's the only thing that I can see. I don't know. What do y'all think about it? Because honestly, dude, there's so much in this industry that doesn't make sense anymore. Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. There's so much weird stuff happening now. There's so much scrambling happening. As in, there's this move, like shutting down a reputable and really talented development studio. There's also new studios coming up that are like trying to swing for the fences and then laying off all their staff to then potentially move all that work to outsource as well, or like to cheaper locations. See Highguard, right? Like the stuff that's unfolding there, where they let like I don't know how many people, like a sizable percentage of the developers go to then move the development work overseas or something like that. That's at least what I've heard from it. It's just like, what? I mean, again, everything is through the lens of numbers. It might make sense, right? But yeah, it's so weird. Slate is saying, as someone who lives in North America, I just feel fucked. I think we've also just gone through like a major like boom cycle, right? With so much VC money coming into the space that it's really hard to, I don't know, to look at that and it not having any consequences, right? Because also on the other hand, right, does that mean that like game development is going to go away from like North America entirely? No, there's no way, you know? There's no way. It's still going to be there. It's still going to be the home where like some of the most popular IPs get developed, right? So that is still a thing. But if you look at the proportion of the development work that was done in the US before, a lot of that is now shifting over to other places just because they just can't keep that large amount of staff on, you know, just in terms of like the financials. Like this is what has been said about AAA for the longest time already, where like CEOs were like ringing the bell where they said like, hey, look, the stuff that we're doing at this scale, like it becomes so difficult. That's also why you don't really see like new stuff breaking into AAA all too often, right? Because it's just like it's too risky for venture capitalist money to like invest in it, right? Unless, I don't know, you're an angel investor or whatever they're called. But also, like, yeah, trying to get into the space now feels like crazy. However, again, I do wanna always end up with like a message of hope, right? Like in your case, Slate, that doesn't mean that you can't get a job in like a North American development studio. They're still there, and you still have a job there. It just comes down to the same thing that we always talk about, and the same thing that we're going to be talking about today. It's just art fundamentals, making sure that you are the right fit for the studio and the development side that you want to, and not the development side, the role that you see yourself in, right? If you just keep applying yourself over a long period of time, I think your success rate is still going to be like pretty high. In a lot of cases, and especially in my case, right? Like, does that mean that you have to move? Yeah. But especially for someone in like North America, I feel like that moving part is way easier because you have a lot more options within the same language than people from Europe do, for example, right? I'm from Belgium, our main language is Dutch, and then I moved to the UK to then speak English, and then I moved to Germany where the main language is German, right? So it's like we have like different cultural and language barriers that as a person from North America doesn't have, right? And that's to your benefit. So it's not all doom and gloom. There's potential. There's always opportunities. And I think it's interesting. That's why I did this exercise on Wednesday, right? When we looked at the State of the Industry report from Matthew Bell. That was more to see where opportunities were headed, right? just so that we as artists can anticipate what is going to happen in the future, or like at least try to anticipate what's going to happen in the future, and then be a little bit more prepared for when those things come. I also need a visa to work. Yep. It depends on where you want to go, right? It depends on where you want to go. Like if you want to go from like Europe to the UK, you will need a work visa. If you want to go from Europe to the US, you need a work visa. All that kind of stuff. I had to apply for one as well. I hate the process. I don't like it myself, but also, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. If you want to get that job, like for example, if your goal is, let's say, super focused on, I want to get in at Naughty Dog, right? In terms of like all the things that you have to do, the visa part is actually quite simple, you know? What, you want to go now? Okay, come on. Bye-bye. Nacho! Nacho has left the room. Just noticed that you almost saw my butt crack, but we're just gonna cut that out, you know? Bye-bye, doggy! Yeah! I saw some positions when companies offer relocation support. Yeah, a lot of companies do actually. Even when they don't say it on the actual application, there are a lot of companies that offer relocation support. So this is a recommendation that I give whenever you do apply for a company where you have to move to get that job offer. Always ask if relocation support is offered. I think when I moved to Berlin, the relocation support was, I think, 1,700 euros, I think. And then when I moved from Berlin to the UK, I think it was about like 6,000 for both of us, right? However, that sounds like a nice number, but there are like very thorough restrictions to what happens with that number and how you can spend it and how quick you need to spend it and all that kind of stuff. And there's also, if you leave the company within a certain time, you have to repay a certain amount of that number. So, you know, it sounds nice in the beginning, but there's strings attached too, right? So that's something to keep in mind. Stefan is saying, for example, Sferasoft told me that they could compensate the plane tickets for me. Yeah, I think it is reasonable to always ask for relocation compensation, honestly. Because there are, for a company, if they really want to hire you, spending like an extra 1,000 or 2,000 or something like that is not that big of a deal. It sounds crazy, right? Because for us individuals, that is like a pretty sizable amount of money. But for a company that in a lot of cases is talking about like budgets in the millions, having to spend like 1,000 here and there on like a person to get like your work, right? Like your value that you add to the company to make you feel more embedded within the team and all that kind of stuff. That's like a small price to pay, in my opinion. And that is also, yes, pay up companies. Yeah, I mean, that's a part of it too, right? It's not only like your labor and, you know, what you add as value to the company. It's also all the other stuff, right? Like your relocation compensation, it's your pension scheme, it's your stock scheme, it's your bonus, it's all that kind of stuff, right? And every company has like a different way of setting that up. So yeah, always try to get the most out of it, you know? Always negotiate. Can they usually help with pets in this case? No, not really. Well, they can, you know, but in my personal experience, I haven't really had help with pets. So that's more like an optional thing, you know? Usually what a company does is they say like, hey, look, we give you this amount of like relocation money, and then you get to decide like how you spend that, right? So I think, yeah, I think we spend like a small amount of money from our relocation package that we could use for like pet transport and all that kind of stuff. But it's usually not as detailed, right? So for example, I think the way that we did it with Playgrounds was they gave us that budget and then they said, hey, look, here's the categories that you can use to spend it on, and travel was included with it, right? So, and that also included travel for your pets and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of like included in it too. So yeah, like I said, always negotiate, always ask, and just always ask information, right? Even if they say like, hey, look, this is our budget for relocation, ask what you can do with that budget, right? Some companies out there, they give a budget with no strings attached. I've heard that from companies as well, where they're just like, hey, look, here's this amount of money. This is what you like. You can do whatever you want. Like you can use it for like personal purchases. Like we don't care. The money's yours now. You know. God like this is asking, can you review my portfolio? Yeah, by becoming a member. If you are interested in environment art, like 3D environment art specifically for games, you can join our community down below, and then you get access to portfolio reviews, which happen on like a weekly basis. I'll give you a little overview. So let me go to our little dashboard that we have for it. So this is our dashboard. I'll talk about some changes in the meantime, in just a little bit. But you can see that this is our dashboard where we can sign up. And then you basically get added to a list down here. And then we go through 2 people like each week. So for this week, we have Alejandro and we have Fishwash. And then next week, we'll tackle 2 other people. I did some changes, but I will talk about those in just a second. So let's switch back over before we dive into some portfolio reviews. How do you find apartments? So many apartments, at least here in Sweden, you get through a queue system, which you would have to be signed up for typically years in advance. I don't think it works like that for expats. To be honest, I don't know how that works in Sweden, right? But usually I just go through like any sort of like I don't know, website that offers apartments, right? Usually from like private people. That's usually the way that we go it. Because even in Berlin, you have that system as well, right? Where you can sign up and get like, I don't know if it's called like social housing, but it's basically you get like more affordable rates by bigger companies that then are also supported by the government. I assume. I'm actually not sure. But we just did it through the private market. So usually the way that we do, and this is also part of the relocation package sometimes, is that the company will actually help you with your apartment hunt as well. In the UK, that wasn't the case. In Berlin, we actually had help from HR, and they would help us with like finding an apartment, or at least point us into the right direction and saying like, hey, look, these are trusted sites, these are untrusted sites, like look here, look there. And they would give you some indication of where to look and how to look for them, right? And they had like a welcome package that would give you like a bunch of tips and tricks and indications on where to look. But I'm not sure about Sweden. For example, the way that we did it here in Belgium was when we moved back, we asked our parents and friends to look to basically go on apartment visits for us, right? And then we would usually, in this case, like our parents like visited this place before. They visited the place and then they had a look for us, and they kind of did like a first vetting, and then we just did everything remote and signed all the paperwork and all that kind of stuff. And that's sort of the same thing that we did in the UK as well. So we had friends of ours or like future colleagues like basically look for apartments, or like at least do the house visits, so that at least we knew where we were moving into. Yeah. But that's through the private market. And I'm sure that you can find the same things in Sweden as well. But usually as an expat, you pay like you do pay like a little bit of a fee on top of it, right? But yeah, moving. It's actually weird. Like a lot of people find like moving like really stressful. I find moving because we've done it so much. moving like not that stressful anymore. The thing that I find most stressful now, and I'm still dealing with it to a certain degree, is having to move a company. Because that is not as easy as just saying like, hey, look, I'm just going to stop this here and I'm just going to sign up here. God, I'm still dealing with like saying and like concluding all the accounts in the UK and all that kind of stuff. And we've been here for like 3 months already, right? So still taking time, still talking to like accountants and all that kind of stuff. So just a smaller selection of choices then, I'm assuming, if you're going to Sweden. Yeah, potentially. Potentially, that might be one of the downsides, yeah. But yeah, I don't think... So, it's interesting, in Berlin, it was actually like pretty chaotic. Just because we weren't aware of some things. For example, you need to have a Schufa. So if anyone here from Germany is here, then... I think you can recognize what I'm talking about, but your Schufa is basically like a credit check, right? Even if you have no credit history at all in the company whatsoever, you still require one. So when we went for what we did is we moved there. I was going to be starting next week. But still in the chaos, like we fucked up like a bunch of things, right? It was like, I don't know, our first big move apart from the UK. And we made too many assumptions. So what we did is we rented an Airbnb for a couple of weeks, I think 1 or 2 weeks. And then we were like, oh, in that time, we are going to find an apartment, right? Because my partner, she was going to be looking for an apartment almost full time. So she could spend our time there while I started working. And then we could balance the transfer that way, right? But we started running into issues like really quickly. So we ran into the issue where we tried to apply for an apartment, which eventually was our apartment that we landed in. But we applied for it first, and they were like, "Hey, where's the Schufa thing?" And we're like, "Oh, okay, sure. How can we get it?" You know, it's like, "Oh, you just need to go to like a post office, and then you can ask them to do like a credit check." I was like, "Okay, pretty weird, but we'll do that." And then the post office was like, "Yeah, but you need a German like phone number to get this." So we were like, okay, sure. So how do we get a German phone number? Oh, you can get a German phone number as you move into your first apartment. You're seeing what the issue is here? Right? So we actually had to move out of our Airbnb to move into a long-term stay so that we could then apply for a phone number so that we could then actually go for that apartment. And we were actually quite lucky because when we went for that apartment viewing, it was the first batch of those apartments, and we basically got lucky that they opened up those apartments in like stages, and then we went back to them like after a while, and they just opened up like a new batch, and we basically just took it like on the spot. We were like, hey, look, here's all the paperwork, here's what we do, like, please get us in, you know, because all of them were the same. The only thing that changed was just like the dimension, so we kind of took it. But yeah, oh yeah, that would be my reaction. Oh yeah, 100%. Like we were just like, wait, what? Like how the fuck are we supposed to do this then? Because even in that Airbnb, you cannot get a phone number because that is only a temporary stay, right? So it had to be like a long-term rental, which obviously we had to pay a shit ton of money for comparatively to even an Airbnb, which was like ridiculous. But anyway, that's like, I don't know, like in the moment it is like, oh my god, what the hell did we get ourselves into? This is oh my god, so chaotic and all that kind of stuff. And then afterwards it becomes a story, right? Like sure, it was chaotic and it was, I don't know, it was frustrating and all that kind of stuff, but also now it's a story, you know? So yeah, it becomes part of your journey. But yeah, just a little snippet of yeah, the famous German bureaucracy. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Oh, there's so many more stories there, but I'm not gonna reveal them all to you in this one single stream, you know. Let's see. Artem is saying Ubisoft Toronto in 2023 had a special HR unit to help with relocations. They covered everything from transfer to conversations with state agents. Yeah, honestly, Ubisoft in general is, or potentially was, I don't know the state of it currently, is pretty good with that. I'll tell you another thing. Like at Ubisoft, they have an internal system where if you work 2 years at a company, I mean, I don't know if they still have it, right? With all the stuff that's going on. But when I was there, they had an internal system where if you worked for a studio for 2 years and you got like a permanent role, I think, you could then start applying internally to other companies. So let's say you wanted to go to Canada. And you said like, hey, look, Toronto has like an opening that I'm really interested in. They would actually like, well, you would apply internally. And there was also like an internal job board as well, where you could apply to like things before they went out to the public first. Not all of them did, but there was like a sort of like a setup there that you could apply before other people would get to see it. That was really interesting, and they would take care of like the majority of things for you, right? Like they would take care of, like you said, the conversations with estate agents. They usually had like local connections with people that would rent out like your first apartment or something like that, right? So it would basically, I've not done it myself, but I've heard people that had like a really good time just like moving from like one place to another, like within the company, which was like really interesting. And that was like one of the benefits of working within Ubisoft, you know, like you could do that. Draw like this is saying, I'm a student looking to build exposure to create strong job opportunities in game art or level design. I would like guidance on how to move in the right direction. So first tip that I'll give you, game art and level design are two completely separate things. So focus on one or the other, and that's already going to make your life like way easier. If I apply to 3D generalist positions with my first job, does it count as experience if I want to work in environment art? Yeah, I mean, any job experience counts as like working within 3D, right? So yeah, it still applies. It just depends, like with a generalist position, it very much depends on what you're going to be doing, right? So for example, if you are a 3D generalist that focuses the majority of their time on VFX, a lot of that work is not necessarily going to be relevant to an environment artist portfolio, right? So it depends on the position that it's going to be in. Level art is the in-between then, I guess. It's not really. I think level art, the way that I would describe it, level art is a subset of environment art that focuses the majority of their time on set dressing. And you're probably the closest that you're going to get to level design, where you usually take a level design block out, right? Like a game space, and then you get to dress it up as a level artist. Now, this differs from company to company, right? So, for example, with my time at Ubisoft, we were doing we would take assets created by other people, then we would go in there and replace the level design blockouts with level arted assets, right? Or like with assets that then would become level art. However, if you look at something like Valorant, I think those artists doing level art are way more hands-on, and they create unique and bespoke geometry based on the need for the level design, right? Because level design in those positions is way more important to the gameplay, because Valorant is like gameplay first, right? Sure, Far Cry is too, but there's some leeway, right? It's not that you're fighting like really intense, like super accurate, like 3v3 battles with like other people, right? So in those cases, level design comes first in Valorant, where it's more of a 50-50-ish in like open world games, I would say. Doesn't it depend on the company? The company I was an intern had a level design artist who was also the environment artist. Yeah, I think level artist and environment artist, the main difference that I would say is that an environment artist also creates stuff, whereas a level artist just purely focuses on building stuff with already existing things, right? If I had to put some quantifier on it, because as you said, One company can call it a level artist, one company can call it an environment artist, and they both do the exact same thing. So, yeah. That's why when we did the exercise, I think it was last week, when we looked at the actual application and how the responsibilities are laid out, that is what you focus on, not on the name of the position. You need to read into the description of the position. Also, how they detail the levels. Keep it simple at an eye level, but put more details on the outside of the eye view. Yeah. 100%. Yeah, there's a lot of considerations depending on the type of game that you're building, right? So something like Valorant is going to be more clean and less cluttered visually because the focus is on the moment-to-moment gameplay, and it's very intense and everything needs to be like super readable compared to something like Far Cry, right? Where sometimes you don't see like something coming out of the bush because there's so much foliage in the way. That stuff can't happen in like a competitive game because then people will quit. Whereas in a Far Cry game, you know, like that's a part of the fantasy, right? Like it's a part of the fantasy of just the world. Slate is asking a question. I'm going to finish my project in 1 or 2 months from now. Do you think I should start grinding connections on LinkedIn, etc.? No, don't grind connections on LinkedIn. That's not going to be useful. To get more visibility and get more views on my ArtStation, I don't think you should. Because even if you're going to grind your connections, people need to follow you because they want to follow you, right? Like if you gathered an interest of people, that's because your work is doing good, right? So the way that you grind your connections on this is sounding so weird now that I'm saying it online. But yeah, the way that you get more views and more people to see your art is by just like putting it out there, right? Or something like we do, that's all there is, right? And if you make like engaging, captivating environments, then people are just going to come to your work regardless, right? Because what we don't want to do is we don't want to spend like 50% of our time creating and then 50% on LinkedIn. That makes no sense, you know. But also, I'll tell you another thing. If your goal is to get like more views on ArtStation, I think getting views on ArtStation is really simple, but it's not the views that matter. It's the people behind the views, right? Because let's say I create a resource, right? A lot of people are having issues with Glass in Unreal Engine 5, right? Let's say I do a 2-week deep dive into Glass and I put that as a resource online. That is going to get a lot of views. But of those views, are people going to get me hired? Probably not, right? Because most of them are people that are struggling with creating Glass themselves. They're not recruiters in a position to get you there, or I don't know, artists that are in a position to get you hired, right? So that's the thing. I think it can help still, right? So for example, the way that I approached it, right? So now I'm peeling back the curtain. Peeling back the curtain a little bit, but you can actually do a combination of the two, right? Where you make a lot of good work first, and you focus really on the art, and then through your learnings, you're then like, hey, look, a lot of people seem to struggle with this. I am then going to build a tutorial on Glass, which is exactly what I did. If you look up Glass, I don't know if it's still relevant. Glass in Unreal Engine 4. The top search result on Google is still my tutorial, at least from what I can tell here, right? That is a way that you can get people to view your portfolio, and then some people are going to look at that tutorial and are going to be like, oh, this is like really well presented. What's their other work? And then they might be like, hey, look, there's this guy doing this really cool tutorial, and they also have like really cool work. That might get you the job, right? But you need to build up the good work first and then focus on stuff that might get you visibility, right? But the thing that you don't want to do is focus all your attention to get the visibility and then forget to do the good work, right? You need to focus your attention where it matters. You said that just as I'm struggling with Unreal Engine 5 Glass right this second. Yeah. I know. Like, Glass is one of those perpetual things that's always gonna be difficult. Thanks. Eye-opening? Yeah. Happy to help, Slate. I mean, take this with a grain of salt, right? Because what worked for me might not work for you 100%, right? So, but that's why my focus is always on experimentation, right? Try those things and don't spend a lot of money. Don't spend a lot of money. Don't spend a lot of time on it. For example, when I wrote that tutorial on glass shaders in Unreal Engine 4, I think I spent like a week on it, right? And it's by far my most viewed post on my ArtStation. And then sure, you know, like a lot of people started following me, and then I started publishing stuff after that. And then because you have more followers, it gets bigger reach and all that kind of stuff. So that's where it can help, right? But yeah, something to keep into account. There's also a bunch of tutorials that like I spent like way too much time on and that no one really saw. I wrote like a 30-page PDF. First of all, who's gonna fucking read like a 30-page PDF just on like Substance Painter like tile materials, right? At this point, just make it a video. Yeah, but there's stuff like that too, and I had to find that out the hard way too. Let's see, a couple more questions, then we'll dive into some portfolio reviews, right? So let's see. You would? Oh, that's good. It's still online. You can still get it. But let's see. Yeah, Satish is asking, did you go to uni? If so, did you land a job right after finishing it? And how long did it take you to land a job since you started studying the environment art? So I studied I graduated with like a major in game graphics from Digital Arts and Entertainment, which is a school in Belgium. At the end of your 3 years, but I and a lot of other people kind of can't finish it in 3 years, so we made it a 4-year course. In my 4th year, I did an internship in my last 6 months, which is mandatory. And basically, I did that for 6 months, and then they hired me straight away. So I went from school to an internship to straight into the industry. And I think that's what I want to see from a lot of schools out there. I think a lot of schools are now doing like the weird second year internship, which doesn't make sense because then you get a lot of industry experience and then you have to go back to school for another year. Makes no sense at all. But yeah, so I basically landed a job immediately after getting the internship. Now, the internship did take me a while to find, and I was very tactical in the way that I spent my time looking for it. That being said, or I'll explain what that means, right? So I can't remember the exact dates and deadlines, but all people from my uni, they were gonna be looking for an internship at the same time, right? So I decided that instead of taking 2 months off during summer vacation, I would start looking during summer vacation so that I would get ahead of those people looking for an internship, right? Because in my mind at that point, I was like, hey, if I'm gonna do like if there is like a fair competition between all of us, right? I am not gonna land on top because there were people that did like way better stuff than I was doing at that time. So I was like, okay, I need to tip the balance in my favor. So I started looking earlier than a lot of people did. And by the time that a lot of people started looking, I already had my internship. Because I remember, the one thing that I remember going back to school was that in my first week getting back to uni, I already had secured my internship when a lot of people started officially looking for it. That was my way of making sure that I was going to get a job, right? So yeah, that's I mean that's what I would do. I would look for those opportunities, right? Where you realize that like, hey, look, even though I enjoy the people around me, it's still a competition. It's still a job market competition at the end of the day. So you need to put in the time, you need to put in the work, you need to be smart about it, right? Nowadays, it's a combination of luck in your portfolio if you get a job right out of uni. Oh no, I still know a lot of people who get a job right out of uni. The difference is the there's a couple of differences, right? So first, the uni where you graduate from, because there's a lot of unis that like if I'm a company, right? So we did this test a couple of years ago, Beyond Extend Studios, we were starting to make our first asset pack. If I was in a hiring position, there's a lot of people that I see graduating from uni now that are nowhere near ready or hireable, right? That's a huge issue. So that depends on the uni that you go to first and foremost. But I'm not going to put all the blame on the unis, because there's also a lot of people who go to really good unis that don't put the time in. And I think that's something that I learned at DIA, like the school that I went to. They were unforgiving with the amount of time that they would require from you to put in. That's why a lot of people do it in 4 years instead of 3, because the amount of stuff that they require you to do is a lot. But that also means that if you are at the end of your 3 to 4 year like university stint, that it's highly likely that you are going to be the one ending up with a job. And I think that's a sacrifice that you make, right? Because I can tell you, in my first year, I was not ready to get that like industry ready job. I was still playing too many games. I wasn't taking shit seriously. I was not ready for it. And I think that is the biggest thing that I learned from uni. What should you do if you're making a concept art, a scene using a concept art, and ask the concept artist for permission but didn't get a response? So this is going to be weird advice, but I don't think you need to even get permission because their work is publicly available on the internet already. It is a good sign of faith to ask for permission, right? But honestly, all you need to do at the end of it is, if you base something off of that artist's work, make sure to fully credit them, link to their ArtStation, all that kind of stuff, right? Make sure that that is in place, and that's all you need to do. I don't really think that there's a really important caveat, right? There's a really important caveat that I forgot to mention. If you're doing any sort of monetization, then you need to get permission. That is a big difference. If you're just doing something for your portfolio, I don't think you need to get permission. If you're doing something that's commercially viable, you will need to get permission or you will get sued. And that's a big caveat there, right? So yeah, you don't need to ask for permission. Just make sure that you credit them. Make sure to send them a nice message. Hey, I posted this work. It was inspired by your work. You're a really big inspiration. If you have any issues with it, like let me know, blah, blah, blah. You know, like just be open about it. Hello, Muhammad. Good to see you. Welcome back. But yeah, that's my thoughts at least. Rustam, sorry, I've skipped your question. I'm thinking about making a fantasy hero prop as my next project. Is the whip streams only for environments? No, it's not only for environments. You can add anything you want. You do have to realize, and this is more for like everyone, right? That my focus is mostly on environments, and that my prop skills are gonna be more limited. I'm probably gonna approach it from like a broader perspective. You ask for permission after you finish the piece and they have a problem with it. Well, even then, you know, I would say like if they have a problem with it, then what are they going to do? Right? You are not making money out of it. And it falls in like the fan art realm, right? Sure. I don't think I don't think they can do anything at that point, you know? And I find it weird that if like an artist would say like, "Hey, look, you can't use this," unless again it is something commercial, right? So for example, if you pick a concept art that is, let's say, it's used for like the next Call of Duty and well, not the next Call of Duty, but let's say for like a Call of Duty game, right? Then it's like, sure, now you are trying to mimic something from like an existing Call of Duty game. Are they gonna sue you for that? Probably not, right? But you have to be somewhat more careful with that. Don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. Nah, always ask permission. Yeah, that is an interesting conundrum there, because I feel like the majority of my growth that I've seen in the industry is when I didn't ask for permission and then I just did the stuff and then delivered on it. So, hmm. I'm gonna get inspired by your work. What are you gonna do about it? Yeah, but it's a weird like, gray area, right? Like if let's say I put up my work and then someone else is gonna get inspired by it and then make their own spin on it, it is like, sure. I mean, that's awesome. You know, like you are taking the time to spend like I don't know weeks, if not months, of your time to then do something that I did with your own spin on it. Like I don't know. I find it weird that you could even be against it, right? What is the starter salary of a junior or an average salary for a junior? It depends heavily on the country. I think if I were to give a bracket right now for, let's say Europe and the UK, I would say that it's probably going to be between 25,000 and 32,000 euros a year. I think that's what I would bet on. But it heavily depends on where you're going to go, right? Lily is saying, I always ask artists for permission on their art station if I can recreate their concepts in 3D. Yeah, and as you should, right? But I think it's a courtesy, right? I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but it's more of a courtesy than you have to ask it. That's my thought on it anyway. And I think it shows respect if you do, right? So I think there's a benefit of doing it. Because also like, okay, we're gonna go back to social media, right? Well, not social media. I guess just like an impression of you in the artistic space, right? I mean, that sounds like very broad, but let me explain. If you reach out to that person and you say like, hey, look, can I get permission? There's a lot of beneficial effects that can happen from that conversation, right? Because they might be like, hey, sure, I've got the 3D baseline around. Do you want to use that? Or hey, here's what inspired this. Like, feel free to use these concepts. Or whatever, right? So there's a lot of good that can come from that interaction. And also at the end, if you did a good job, right? Then they might be like, hey, look at this awesome person, like got inspired by my work. Like, this is amazing. Looking at it in 3D. So I think you should, but that doesn't mean that you have. You have to, if that makes sense. I've never seen anyone have a problem with it. Yeah, I don't think so either. I think the only thing that happens there is that if it's super derivative. So for example, if the issue is always that if they don't credit you, right? So for example, if they recreate like the thing that you do, they do an okay job at it, and then they don't even credit you, right? It's like, what? Galazar says, right, it depends, because I'm always thinking about like what I should be asking for a salary. What expectations and what should I say? There's a lot of information out there online. There's a couple of years ago, there was some really, really good Google spreadsheets going around from people just saying like how much they would earn, and you could actually filter by location and all that kind of stuff. I am working on like a salary database, but it's taking the back burner a little bit. But I do have a lot of this data saved for future reference that will become like a resource for our community as well. But still, it still pays off to not only rely on like one single source of truth, right? And just go to, I don't know, other sources. Yeah. If you don't get a response, they're kind of leaving it up to you, making something from it anyway. Yeah, I mean, it's also it's about a broader topic of. I guess it comes down to the broader topic of like what is stealing and what is inspiration, right? So, for example, if you just like rip someone else's work off and you don't credit them, that is stealing, right? If you just straight up do the same thing that they did and then don't credit them, that's stealing. But however, if you take a concept art, and this is why I like rough concept art, right? Like concept art that is not like super finished yet, is because I can infuse it with my own spin, right? That's why I love using very rough concept art. And that also allows you to be like, hey, look, I took this, but then I put my own spin on it. And then people can start comparing like, oh, I like what they did here, but I also like how they translated it into 3D and all that kind of stuff, right? And it's also a good skill to show. Yeah, and the only thing that I can really see immediately is that they're afraid of the consequences of maybe like a commercial property coming into the mix, right? That's why sometimes, yeah. That's why sometimes. What was I going to say? So I'm just reading through these questions. No, anyway, it flew away. I want to be better at realistic lighting. I tried to use like physically based lighting, but so much details included. What's this purpose for me? I have no idea. I've never tried like physically based lighting because I'm not a lighting artist, you know. But we do have some good workshops on that topic. If you are interested in that, though. Right. Like Glassdoor, yeah, Glassdoor would be a good one to start with, right? I would also still go looking at some of the publicly available salary data. It's probably going to be like a little bit trickier to find now. I think I have like a bunch of them saved, but yeah, there's a lot of public available data online about salaries and salary expectations and what you can expect in like countries and continents and stuff like that. You just have to look for it. And I think honestly, this is a good use case for using something like ChatGPT or Copilot or something like that, right? To find out those salary expectations and then link you to those sources. That might be a good thing to use it for. But always verify, right? Always verify. You don't want to be gambling your future on like something that like an AI said. All right, we are going to be switching over to portfolio reviews. So let me switch on over to the other screen. I did do some changes to the formula, so let me run you through them. This is our portfolio review page. You can get access to this by becoming a member. Like it has like a fill-in form, how we grade your portfolios, with like a bunch of tips, and you get like a bunch more like cool stuff in it as well. But I did do some changes here. I changed artist to hireability. So with hireability, what I wanted to do is I wanted to focus more on, again, what makes you as an artist, but then also like how you make your CV and all that kind of stuff, right? So it sounds a bit more appealing and a bit more direct rather than artist, you know? So I changed like some of these taglines as well. So your tagline and how you see yourself aligns with the work on display, right? This is important because you can call yourself a 3D environment artist, but if you have only characters in your portfolio, then what's the point, right? You're easy to contact and have all the information required for me to hire you. I added this one specifically in here because I was browsing some people's portfolios from LinkedIn and other sources, and some people when you go on their LinkedIn, they're saying like, hey, look, I'm open to work, hire me. And then it takes me like 5 minutes to find their portfolio because they don't have a direct link to it, right? A lot of people are not going to spend those 5 minutes. Your CV is laid out with a clean, simple one-page design. I added the one-page design because we saw some people with 2-page designs and more, right? Just make it one page, really simple. And your portfolio is easy to navigate. If you use ArtStation, I think a lot of this is taken care of for you. But this also, I'm gonna lump in that you shouldn't add like a bunch of work on your portfolio just to pad your portfolio, right? We're not gonna be doing that. Let's see. I think there's some duplicates in here still. So for presentation, nothing really has changed. I just like fleshed out some of these ones. So your thumbnails are captivating and clickable. They showcase quality. Your thumbnail and artwork design across the entire portfolio is consistent. Oh no, this is where you do your additional bits of presentation, right? You add like a bit of flair or you add fonts or anything like that. It has to be consistent across your entire portfolio. Think about yourself as a business, right? And then try to get consistency within that too. Showcase only the most relevant and best artwork you can create, right? So I don't want to see like your first year student work because that's not going to be relevant to me hiring you for your portfolio, for our studio, right? And the amount of images in your artwork is focused and concise. Again, there's no set rule, but I don't want to see like a couple of images that are just like, oh, this is like an angle from here and then slightly shifting it over and slightly shifting it over. We need to be more concise. Your composition focus on your focal point in your scenes or assets. And this is, I renamed this to artistry, right? So this is your artistic ability, pure artistic skill, and your ability to tell stories through composition and more. But I made these more specific. So your composition focuses on your focal point in your scene or assets, right? I want to immediately see that you know how you can draw me in to the place that you want me to look. Your focal point tells a compelling story. Story is really important, right? You can pull me into something, but if I then have nothing to look at, right? If it's not interesting, if it doesn't tell a story, if it's not compelling, then what's the point? A strong showcase of knowledge of fundamentals such as color, shape, composition, and player leading for us. This is sort of composition as well. But you can kind of call it player leading in our case because we do stuff for games, right? So that's going to be important for us too. Yeah, this is duplicate one. Let me remove that in just a bit. And then your techniques, I tried to flesh this out a bit. I think this is like, I need to give it some more thought, but each project has an interesting breakdown showcasing your approach, what your approach is for more complex elements in your scene, right? So what I mean by that is I don't need you to break down like how you set up vertex painting, you know? I think vertex painting is okay if it's your first time that you do it to kind of break it down. But if you then show vertex painting in every scene that you do, it's like, okay, you've learned vertex painting. How are you gonna add on top of it, right? Like put a spin on it or add complexity to it. And this is also the same for assets, right? I don't want to see like a breakdown of a bottle, for example. I want to see a breakdown of like a piece of machinery that is like really complex and really took you some time to make compared to some of the easier elements in your scene, right? So that's an important one. And then breakdowns include wireframe, UVs, poly count. I need to add textures in here as well. And then your breakdowns are efficient in showing the most interesting parts of your scenes broken down, right? So this goes more about efficiency, but that's more about like, oh, we're not going to create a bunch of images for a single thing. It's like, how do I display this in the most efficient manner, right? So I changed all of this up a little bit. Hopefully this makes more sense. But yeah, if you have any questions in the chat during our whole portfolio talk, feel free to shout them out. And then we'll discuss them in the middle of it. Right, let's go to our first portfolio then. The first portfolio is from Alejandro Martinez. So let's have a look at your work, Alejandro. First of all, we're gonna be starting with what I said here, right? So the hireability. I'll do just a scan of what is interesting. If you have like easy to reach out, if you're easy to reach out, if you have your CV and all that kind of stuff, right? So 3D environment artist, game design student at Drexel University with a passion for building immersive worlds, inspired by the magic of video games and stories I grew up with. I now bring the same sense of wonder into environments and experience. Cool. Okay. I think this is good, right? It gives me like a little bit of flavor to what you bring to the table, which is cool. I wonder... Well, no, it's fine, actually. It's fine. Let's have a look at your LinkedIn as well. Let's see. Da-da-dum. So you got your portfolio link here, which is good. Love to see that. Top skills. Majoyska Games. Did an internship last year, which is cool. Yep, that makes sense. I think a lot of this is like really nicely laid out. You have your contact information here, which is really, really good. So yeah. And that's the thing, we're not expecting much, right? But what I want to see here is that if I want to get a deeper understanding or immediately connect with you, then I can do it immediately, right? It's about reducing friction. So let's see, let's have a look at the About page. Let me make sure that we open this up. Like a new page. I guess we'll do that. Right. Let me add this here. I don't know why it opened in Edge. So weird. So, single page, good to see. You've got like clickable links here. Let's see, they go to the right directions. That is good. Open to relocation, which is nice. If you say open to relocation, it might also be nice to also state where you are living currently, right? It doesn't have to have your street address and all that kind of stuff. I just want to know which state that you live in, right? Or near which big city or whatever, so that I get a sense of where we would, if we want to hire you, where you would be relocating from, right? Then you got your professional experience. I would say don't dive into experience immediately. I would take that little snippet that you did where you explain a little bit more about yourself and kind of give us like a little intro to who you are again, right? Because also what might happen is that I'll download your CV and I'll send it to someone else, and then they don't have that additional context of your ArtStation account, right? So keep that in mind. Cool, created environment prompts and set dressed them in engine, turning Greybox assets into finalized art placed within the level. Cool. Did you do any communication here with level design? Because that could be good to highlight, right? Like what we want to do is want to make sure that whenever a new company hires you, that you can already do most of the functionality that you were expected to do in this new company, right? So try to highlight, created environment prompts and set dress them in engine, which is good, turning Greybox assets into finalized art placed in the level. And then add like with constant discussions going back and forth with level design or something like that, right? Model textured, UV unwrapped and sculpted in-game assets. Collaborated with the environment lead. This is good. So this is highlighting communication, right? Which is gonna be in a lot of responsibilities. Like you'll see this in a bunch of applications where this is one of the responsibilities that you'll have as an environment artist, to talk to the creative lead, right? Optimize environment and prop assets for Unreal Engine 5 using the high to low poly workflows. Validate performance in engine. That's good. Use Blur for source control. Nice. Adapted new stylus art. I think most of this is good, right? I would say here with your skills, I would highlight what you can do, not your programs, right? This feels like a list of programs, but what I want you to spell out is, hey, I'm good in high to low poly modeling. I'm really good at making trim sheets for highly modular like building kits. Like, try to be more focused about what you bring to the table in terms of workflows and yeah, directly applicable to the pipeline, right? Because when I hear Unreal Engine 5, it can be anything, right? When I hear Maya, it can be anything. Try to be more specific with what that means. You're doing a great job of applying some of this stuff here already. I would want to see more of that stuff spelled out. And then you can say like programs, and then you say comfortable, or like, I don't know what you wanna do there, right? You say like, these are my daily drivers, Unreal Engine 5, Maya, Substance Painter, blah, blah, and these are my additional skills that is like, I don't know, Affinity or Adobe and all that kind of stuff, right? Cool. It's good to see. I think overall it's good. Just a couple of improvements here and there would be good. Did you work for these at the same time? Interesting. Is that right? I guess... Wait, what was this? Rocket Jump Games. Rocket Jump Games is not even on here. Interesting. That might be a thing that you missed out then. There's some funky stuff happening here too, because you worked from March 2025 to September 2023 with them. This is weird that ArtStation even allows you to do this. It goes back in time rather than forwards. Yeah, small thing, but that can be taken care of. Cool. I think overall this is good. You know, very streamlined. You've got everything that I would need here. You've got a LinkedIn, very professional, very good, very good. So I think this part is actually pretty good. So let's have a look at the work then. We're gonna skip the team challenge. We might look at that at the back end. Bro worked from 2025 to 2023. Yeah, exactly. Like freaking time traveler over here. Right, Brick Study. This is the last piece that you've done, right? I think visually it looks cool. It looks cool. These renders are pretty good. I like them, even though they're like standard renders. What I want to see is what I want to see here is I want to see context, right? Because what I oftentimes lack in materials is that, look, you can make it look really good on Sphere, but if you take a little bit of extra time and let's say this is a wall and you do like a slight bit of vertex painting and you add like, I don't know, maybe like a little bit of a decal and with like a little bit of walkway, right? Like I am almost just imagining like if we open up Epic Pen, do like a little draw over. I'm almost imagining that like you could almost just showcase like the curb, right? So this is like the curb and then your wall kind of goes up. That your wall could just be here and then you just take like a Megascan asset for the curb and that is going to be presenting like as a way more interesting asset by just taking the presentation just a little bit further, right? And that also showcase that you can apply your material not only as like, oh, I've got a tileable for you, here you go, have fun. But also you can think about like what next steps there are and how you get more involved with the pipeline, right? And that honestly doesn't take you too much time. With these guys, I would condense them down to a single image. Show me a breakdown, show me a single image. That's all I need. I don't need like 4 separate things. Also, let me know texture resolution, right? Texture resolution. Let me know that, like the aimed texel density that you're going for, like all that good stuff. Make it about game art, not just the image alone. And that's going to be good, right? So condense the breakdown to one image, make it really interesting for me to look at, and then showcase what I want to know, right? Texture resolution and in context. Right, then we have the next thing here. We have said a lot of stuff about this one already because we did like Whip Wednesday together. But let's have a look at the presentation of it. So this is one of those cases where it's like, do I really need to see like an additional screenshot from this, right? Because this is showing me the exact same thing, just from a slightly different angle. It is totally fine for your environment, by the way, to not have multiple angles, especially if the environment doesn't support it, right? I think it is good to keep in mind that your environment should support multiple angles, right? Because that is what we do. We make game environments, so we make a 360 view, right? But don't try to cram your single camera environment into like a multi-camera thing, right? Cool little section of breakdown. I would say make this slimmer, right? Tiny tip, just make it slimmer. Don't make it like a full thing, because that's also going to read better as a separation too. So make this like, I don't know, nicely fit around the little font. Slight little tip here again. If everything is full screen, make these guys full screen as well. It's just going to be nice for consistency to have everything full screen instead of like jumping all over the place, right? Modular overview. Let's keep the pen out. I would say this guy, it's good that you have a character reference. I do like that. I don't want him to be shiny though, because now what's happening is that, look at this guy. This is important, whether it's not, right? So just make it like the default mannequin, or maybe even make him like a really dull gray, right? You see this oftentimes used in like Material, where they just, in Material breakdowns, where they just have an unlit version of the character, showcasing that it is good to have some sort of like reference for the proportions, right? But we don't want it to steal away the attention from all the rest of it. Cool, a couple breakdowns. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Glass ended up being changed for a shader. Interesting. Main metal plates, plane surface material, oxidization. Interesting. Okay. So this is more of like an artistic tip, but next time, this doesn't need to be a trim sheet. This can just be a tileable with like a rusted tileable on top of it, and then you just blend them with vertex painting, right? Instead of trying to match everything on a trim sheet. The only thing where I can see the trim sheet being of use is where you want to have like panel lines or little decals, or I don't know, some sort of like surface material, right? But I wouldn't use a trim sheet for these surfaces. I would just use tileables. This is an interesting one. I guess it's just the way that they're lit. The left one almost reads to me as flip normals, or there's like wrong directionality going into this tileable. Maybe that's because it is lit up from like the bottom here, which kind of makes it look a bit strange, but this one looks a little bit off to me, directionality wise. Let's see, concrete sculpt. Yeah, we can not see the translation here, right? Like I'm not seeing how you did like this sculpt here, and then it translates to like a flat surface. I'm not seeing any of those details. But yeah, let's see. It's not necessarily about like the art, right? We're not gonna dive into like too much of the niche stuff. Then you got your process. It is good. So the reason why I like seeing these processes is because it clearly shows that over time you realized, and this is from our Whip Wednesday conversations as well, right? That you had a lot of distracting surfaces. And you were like, hey, look, we're just gonna focus down on the core component of the scene. This is cool to see, right? Maybe a little bit fast, but still cool to see. Let's see, reference gathering. I personally don't really see a lot of interest in this, especially because if I really wanted to see what's happening, I am then looking at it like this, right? And I can count the pixels. So the significance of adding like your reference sheets, I would potentially just fill them out completely with images and then just say like, hey, look, try to make the maximum amount of your space basically on the image. Because if we are looking from it from like a usability perspective, right? We are losing like, I don't know, at least 50%. At least 50% of this image is just like unused. So it's really uninteresting to look at because of that, right? And then the stuff that is used, I can't even zoom into it. So what's the point? Right? So if you add, and this is more like a general thing, right? If you add something to your posts, make sure that the information that you want to translate is readable and comes across, right? Because this doesn't really add value. If I can individually look at some of the references here, that would potentially be more interesting. Hey, MSArt, welcome, welcome. Good to see you back. How are you doing? So, learn more about the workflow, improve my user trim sheets, and gone deeper into planning and applying modular kits. More than anything, this project has me excited to keep creating, building on what I've learned, and keep pushing myself further. Cool. I would say an interesting way to break this up, because you have a little short story here, right? People are fed up, so they're creating their own right in front of it all. The back alley bar was a piece. Took many turns. I would condense this into a couple of sections. So I would say, quote unquote, this is a story, right? Put like a little dot as like a separation, then talk about why you did it, and then talk about like how you did it, right? Or like maybe a short description on like why you did it, and then how you did it with like, I don't know, individual lines like, here's what I learned, trim sheets, modular buildings, tileable texture creation. Like, try to be more concise with this stuff, because the likeliness of people reading this is pretty low. Beauty is asking a question, should you even add a PureRef board? In my opinion, no. But I am also aware that a lot of other people have said that there is some value to it. So that's why I'm being somewhat more open to the idea of having it there, right? But I honestly don't think a PureRef board, in my opinion, doesn't serve any purpose to the work itself. I'll explain why. If I cannot see your references through the artwork that you created, you've already lost me. So if I can't tell that you got inspired by like Gothic architecture and then put your own twist on it during this, right? Like, what's the point? You adding a PureRef board is just trying to explain what you can't show, right? And your job as an environment artist is showing and convincing me visually of the image. Because if you think about it, right? If I play a game and I can't immediately tell what it is, a player is not going to look at your reference board. They don't care. They shouldn't care. You know? So I want you to convince me with the visuals, not a reference board. Yeah, same question, I guess. Ashish, should you ask your reference then? No, same thing, right? Same thing. See, the explanation that I just had is just, to me, it serves no purpose, because it's almost like, oh, I'd be curious to see what your references are, already assumes that there's something wrong with the image, if you get what I mean. Let's see. I think that was it, right? We can quickly look at what happened here during the team challenge. Made some tileables, made some planks. This is good. This is going into the right direction, right? I like the little spin on it with the witch's hat. It is still a little bit intense, right? But I do like where your presentation style is going here. I do like that a lot. I think this is also going into the right direction with like showcasing the angle at the light at a certain angle where you can showcase like the roughness materials and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, oh, this is cool. Floor destruction demo. Yeah, okay. Wall decals. That is cool. I think the presentation here is actually going into the really right direction, right? Like this is engaging for me to look at. Like it is short, it is snappy, it shows interesting stuff. There's none of the fluff, and it's all about like the context, right? I think what I would say is that the visuals can definitely be improved, right? Keep it into account that it is 5 weeks of intense stuff during a team challenge, right? But this sort of presentation is definitely going into the right direction. And even this material workflow, pretty clean, right? Sculpting in ZBrush, set up in Maya, bake texture in Painter. It's good. I just caught that at the wrong time, I think. Just something like this. Just get OBS. Just get OBS. It's free, you know. But that is funny, though. Okay, I would say for something like this, if you're showcasing your RGB mask setup, right? It is cool that you're showcasing the individual layers, but then also show me the effect that happens on a big wall, for example, right? Because I'm curious, like you're showing me the colors, but I want to see the effects of all those individual layers, right? And maybe that means having to, I don't know if this is like RGB or decals, because you do call it decals here, but maybe this is RGB stuff. So if you can show it here, and then maybe in the scene itself, you can then share like, hey, this is the impact on the scene. Or maybe you add like two short videos after each other where you show the setup and then the influence on the scene, right? Something like that. It's more about I immediately get where it's coming from. Yeah. These presentations, they feel a little bit more basic, right? So I would maybe explore, this is not necessarily for the team challenge, right? But I would definitely explore going a little bit more in depth with the presentation next time, where if you showcase something like this, have like the floorboard still under it, maybe have like a wall still behind it, or like a portion of the environment still behind it, right? So that we get everything in context. But yeah, overall, I think this is going into the right direction. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done when it comes to the actual crafting of the texture, right? We have like a seam that's happening here, which hints at like some details getting lost in the creation of the actual asset, where maybe you forgot to, I don't know, do one layer in Substance Painter, but it's those details that really matter, right? Let's see. But I do like the presentation here. If we talk about that, you've got like the logo. Obviously, some of that stuff got provided, but there's something nice about like being so bold with like using your own logo and tagline here. What I would do in this case is instead of your tagline, I would make that your email address. So that if this gets shared around on Pinterest, right? And it get clips out of it gets clipped out of context, that other people can then still contact you, right? Even if it's just on Pinterest. Right. And it's making me really curious, like I can see the presentation going forward. Oh, there's also one thing that I would want to say. If you're doing, in terms of consistency, right? If we have your showcase of the scene, which is quite nice, and then we go into the breakdown, do the same thing that you did here, right? Make it clean. Think about the separation between the actual work and the breakdown. Add like a small banner. Try to be consistent with those elements, right? That can be to your benefit. You can then even say, instead of breakdown, you can say assets and textures for bigger breakdowns, right? Let's say something like assets, textures, and tech, you know, if you've done like a bunch of like cool tech stuff. Cool. Okay, so where do we land for you, Alejandro? Let's have a look. Hireability, I would say that a lot of it actually was pretty good. I think the hireability downsides currently is just from the pure visuals, right? Like the artistic output needs to be, or your, I don't want to make it sound so vague. So your use of colors, your use of proportions, you want to go for a realistic art style. I want to see you like double down on that, right? All those things need to be further developed for you to become like more interesting in terms of like hireability, right? I think if you're setting a benchmark with where you want to go with something like this, I think you're on the right track, right? And I think, because I know what you're currently working on, right? The little scene that you're working on. If you keep yourself accountable and everything is going to be at this higher standard now, and all the individual materials are going to be looking as good as this one, you are going into the right direction, right? But that's not what we're currently seeing here, and that takes time, right? So give it a little bit of time. So in terms of hireability, what did we say? CV is laid out in a clean one-page example. That is good, easy to contact. Your tagline and where you see yourself aligns with the work on display. I think the top one is where I struggle the most, right? Because right now, what I'm seeing in your portfolio, if we can only really go for the brick study, and that is honestly not enough to convince me, right? So I think in terms of, I think actually you have a solid basis already when it comes to your the way that you display yourself online, right? Like your LinkedIn is very, very nicely laid out. Your ArtStation has all the components that are there. It's just that now the art needs to come up forwards. So I would say that in terms of hireability, I'm going to land at a 6, I would say. Being dragged down by currently the lack of connection between your work and your goals, right? Because I forgot to read this as context, but my career goal is becoming an environment artist in games. I would like to work in games that have a more realistic style, closer to those like Naughty Dog or Rocksteady. For me, it's more about crafting worlds and enhance storytelling and immersion, right? So it's because of that there is still a disconnect. Between your art and the goals. The brick study is going into the right direction, though. There it is. Now let's see, presentation. I think presentation overall was pretty good. The thumbnails, I think this thumbnail is pretty basic, right? Everyone has seen like 1001 like just material spheres. This is where the context can help a lot, right? Like try to put it in context, try to make it a mini scene, slap some mega scans in there, make it more interesting for me to look at, right? This one, the back alley bar, is not really that interesting. Just because I don't really know what I'm necessarily looking at from a distance, right? It's not that readable. But then compared to the team challenge, we're getting into that territory where I'm getting a bigger sense or a better sense of what you want to showcase, right? So I can see a transition. It's just that currently the presentation when it comes to your thumbnails definitely needs to be improved. However, I do like, again, where you're thinking about the fonts, you're thinking about like the size of the fonts, you're thinking about like breakdown banners, all that kind of stuff. So I think you're definitely on the right track when it comes to showcasing your presentation. And just keep working on those small little details, right? Keep improving on what you're already showcasing here. And keep thinking about like what people want to see. So presentation currently, I'll give you a... I think a 6. And then in terms of artistry, there's still a lot that I want to see. I wasn't really convinced by most of the stuff that I saw here, right? And this also, and this again, I know this sounds harsh, but trying to design an environment yourself and then also building it yourself is really unrealistic in the beginning, especially as your first portfolio piece, right? So start from a concept. There's a lot of context here. Like, just to give you some context, Alejandro is working on like a really cool piece that is based on a concept art, and I can see a massive improvement already. Just because you don't have to do the thinking, you just have to do the executing, right? So, and that has a lot of potential. But in this one, there's a lot of flaws, right? There's a lot of proportions, like there's a lot of things that I can't really read. It is really difficult to get like a sense of what this is supposed to be, and there's too many themes and elements clashing all over the place. So in terms of artistry, we're gonna go for something pretty low at this point. But as I said, your next portfolio piece is showing a lot of promise, so keep that up. And then your techniques. I was pretty underwhelmed by some of the sculpting here specifically, right? And then the techniques here of using a trim sheet on something that is probably better done with a combination of vertex painting and like making multiple tileable materials. It's almost showcasing the wrong workflow for the application that you wanted to go for, right? So next time, it is actually way easier to just make like a main metal plate and then have like a rust tileable and then just have some way to blend between them, right? Usually the easiest thing is vertex paint. You can also do that with like RGB masking, something like that. But that is just showcasing that the pipeline needs some work, right? The understanding of where that is going to go. Let's see. I did really like how you did some of this stuff here, right? Like really trying to min-max, you have your tileable. Can I then turn that tileable into like a plank because I have the sculpt and all that kind of stuff? This is showcasing some really good potential. So I like what's happening here. Use that same sort of thinking in your next projects, right? I think that's going to be like highly useful for you. Right, so currently techniques, let's see, we're going to do some finessing here. So I'm going to bump up the artistry to 4, do the techniques to 3 at the moment, because also, like, there's a lot of stuff that's still missing, right? I mean, we're not going to see too much about, like, a texture, but you talked about, for example, showcasing that you've done a lot of asset optimization where you bake down from the high to low poly, right? Where does that work? I want to see that work, right? Because that can be an interesting differentiator, right? Pewdie, thank you so much for the reminder. Let me send you the link. Because I think people like this, right? Like people like Alejandro and a lot of people that we talk about, a lot of them have a lot of potential. If you focus our attention on the thing that needs to happen, so following along with their process actually is like pretty interesting, you know? So make sure to give them a follow, give them a like, all that good stuff, support them in their journey. Shadowping is asking, can I send you my work, please? You can, but you have to become a member. So this is a weekly stream that I do where I review 2 portfolios a week. But it is focused on community members that are, a part of our community. So you can find the link in the description down below. And then yes, it costs money, but also there's a lot of additional value on top of it. I do weekly work reviews. I do weekly portfolio reviews. You get like a PDF of 250 pages. There's a lot of value in there. At least in my opinion. I might be biased, you know, who knows? Let's have a look. YouTube chat is confusing me. Where do I text? Interesting messages or chat? Sometimes messages don't appear. Weird. Is there a difference? Where do I text? I have no idea. Oh, I think what might happen is that there's sometimes a delay between what you text and what you see on screen. So yeah, I have no idea. Let's go here. Let's finish this off. So we were talking about the techniques, right? I think. Let me add some additional notes. Because I wanted to see like more individual prompts broken down. Because you did say that on your CV, right? So I want to see what that looks like and how you did that, because I'm really curious. And also just as like a way of showcasing that you can also check that box, right? So let's do high to low poly is missing. Proper use of trim sheets. And yeah, and in general, workflows can be improved if used properly, right? This is what we talked about, where sometimes you use a workflow, but you're not using it in the right way, right? So for example, the trim sheets, that being like titleable textures, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, let's see. Just as like a final roundup, I like to work in games that have a more specific, more realistic style of arts, similar to Naughty Dog or Rocksteady, right? If the goal is a realistic style, then definitely focus more on this sort of stuff, right? The environment that you're working on now, if you can finish it up with like this sort of quality in mind, I think we're definitely on the right track. But yeah, think about even with the concept that you're doing now, think about how you can elevate it above the concept that you're using, right? Because this comes down to an earlier conversation where this is why I love using rougher concepts, because it's easier for me to put my spin on it, right? But what they still want you to see is that you can take a concept and then still put your own spin on it that is then going to be better and elevating the concept, right? So in your case, maybe let's imagine that it's like a dingy alley that's like, I don't know, mossy and all that kind of stuff. You can do a lot of really cool stuff with bits of foliage there too. But yeah. So yeah, thank you for showcasing the work, Alejandro. Keep it up, buddy. Let me see. Let's do a final check. Hireability, presentation. I'm gonna bump that down just a little bit. Hireability is pretty good. Artistry. Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you, Alejandro. I appreciate it. Hey, Vishwash. Right on time. In the meantime, for people that are new here, first of all, welcome. Happy to have you here. Also, if you have any questions about some of the stuff that I talk about, or maybe some general industry advice, or anything that I can help with, feel free to ask them in the chat and we can discuss it, right? Oh, last thing that I'll do is I'll again add Alejandro's work in here. Please go follow Alejandro. There's a lot of promising work coming up. So yeah, keep supporting each other on your artistic journey. Let's have a look then. Why is it trying to unlock the banner? So weird. But yeah, okay. Let's continue on our journey then. So Vishwash submitted, oh shit, over a month ago. Dang it. You'll need to do some speed runs here soon. But your goals are CDPR and Remedy Entertainment. Okay, Cool. So you are in India currently. There's probably, the reason why I bring that up is there's probably going to be some like visa stuff, right? I actually don't know how easy it is to get a European visa if you come from India. I don't know if there's like some, I don't know, some things that you can do there. I'll need to actually talk to some friends that came from India as well to get some additional context. But that's something to keep in mind, right? As you're trying to get into the games industry, this is going to be a reality for most of us, that a lot of us have had to move and a lot of you will move in the future. So being aware of the requirements for certain companies in certain countries is going to be important, right? But you are an environment artist, cool. 3D environment artist, 3D artist. It's a small thing, but calling yourself an environment artist and then 3D artist in the same thing. Just change it both to 3D environment artist, right? Make it concise and similar. But you're saying a 3D artist with a passion for creating game environments and materials. Okay. Cool. Cool. Let's have a look then. First your LinkedIn and your YouTube as well. Okay, let's have a look. "2D level design." Cool. This looks like some fun stuff that you were playing around with. Is that the latest stuff? Ruffle ripped off frontal lobe gameplay? Okay, let's have a look. Is this like some Call of Duty stuff? Vishwas is saying, didn't expect the YouTube bit to be the first one to be reviewed. Well, here's the thing, right? This is why it's important to keep certain things on your portfolio or off your portfolio, depending on where you want to see people, where you want to have people see it or not, right? Because this is also, here's the thing, right? Like you're probably cringing a little bit dying inside, right? Because this is so old, but this is what you're showcasing to hiring managers, right? If you add a YouTube link on here, then yeah, that is literally what is going to happen, right? Like this is what people are going to be seeing. And again, this is just like a showcase of, if you don't want people to look at things, hide them. And this is going about like YouTube links. This is going about like social media links. Maybe there's like a personal social media. Maybe there's like another social media. You know, maybe you have a professional and personal one. Maybe not linking both is interesting. But yeah, that's why, like, people will look at this, right? And then maybe depending on the time and the age when you posted it, right? You could then, I don't know, when was this? You can tell, right? Like 3 years ago, 5 years ago, sure, that is old stuff, right? So I'm not really going to take that into account all too much, but maybe someone else will. So I would always say err on the side of caution and just only show like the curated, really nice stuff. But that's like a small thing, right? Ika here from the EMC Discord. Welcome. Good to see you, Ika. Hope you're doing well. Let's have a look. So what else is happening here? You got your portfolio here as a link, which is good. Contact information, easy to reach out to. Nice, I love to see it. We're not going to be doing a deep dive here, but most of the stuff that I'm just looking for here is just if it's easy to reach out to you, if I can immediately go back to your portfolio, and that the linking between those two is going to be nice, right? Cool. Let's go to your about page. Same thing here. Let me quickly do this the proper way. Let me open your CV. Oh, Wrong thing here. Let's maybe do this. Is there any personal information that you don't share? I think we're good. Okay. Let's go back. Let's go back to the CV. Technical environment artist. Okay. So we got environment artist, we got technical environment artist, we got 3D artist. Something to keep in mind again, right? The consistency between how you name yourself. Because if you call yourself a technical environment artist, then I would definitely want to see more of a focus on potentially tool creation, potentially like really in-depth complex shader creation, some of that stuff, right? Because I think sometimes it's easy. There's maybe an expectation that if you do a shader left and right, and then you're making your own shaders in Unreal, that you are now a technical environment artist, right? But a technical environment artist usually goes like way deeper than a normal environment artist, right? Like really making tools, like going into Python, like all those like more, you're basically building the bridge between programming and artists, right? That's what you're doing. Anyway, specializing in real-time environment creation, material systems, PBR materials, and shader workflows in Unreal. Experienced in modular asset pipelines, trim sheets, vertex painting, and performance-conscious materials. Okay. Interesting. Focusing on building visually grounded environments while maintaining scalability, consistency, and production efficiency. Okay. This feels very wishy-washy, right? It's just like I'm trying to hit as many key terms that I can. And the important thing here is that all the stuff here, if it's not on your portfolio, then it doesn't really matter, right? I don't know if it is yet. We're going to have a look in just a second, but I'm going to keep that into account. Design-driven environment art, modular workflows, cross-team collaboration, problem-solving, technical skills, Unreal Engine 5. Unreal Engine 5 is not really a technical skill, right? This is more of the same issue that we saw with the previous CV as well, where you call something skills, but then you list programs. So what I would say is maybe just instead of doing a split between your professional and technical skills, I would just call this entire thing skills, and then focus more on, let me just get the pen out again. I would honestly get rid of this, or maybe even call it like software or something like that, right? Oh my God, drawing with a mouse is horrendous. We're calling it software, and then maybe this can stay, but I would love to see more of this stuff, where it's like modular environment creation using trim sheets, design-driven environment art. We'll see. I don't think that's really relevant here, but it's more explaining what you do in detail, right? Project Haven. Are these just like your portfolio projects? Sorry, we're just gonna have a quick glance here. Yeah. Huh. This. This is basically your portfolio, right? Your CV is not your portfolio. So, oh my God, I cannot write here. So this should not be told. This should be shown, right? So this is if I'm seeing on your portfolio and I'm seeing it again on your CV, then we're doubling up information, right? So I would cut out any projects that you've done unless they are relevant to team-based experiences. So for example, if you worked on a game, if you worked on a project together with other people, anything like that that can show anything above just your individual contributions, that's what I would put here. If it's just your portfolio, just keep it to the visuals on your portfolio. Cool. Your professional experience, a 3D art production TA in Santa Cruz, and technical game developer freelance. Cool. Okay, so you got some experience here as well, which is good. And then you got your experience here as well. So I would say really condense this down, focus more on your skills in general. Have your software maybe there in there too, but don't pad your CV out with your projects because I want to see that on your portfolio rather than anything else, right? I would also say a tiny thing here. Whenever you add links, make them in like the blue hyperlink color, right? This is immediately readable. People know that's a link immediately. Because anything else, I didn't even realize that I can click on your Gmail to like open it, right? So make it read like it's clickable because that's going to help readability too. Cool. All right, let's dive into some projects then. I had a quick look before the stream already. So this is from 2 weeks ago. The goal was to explore how to paint rust and expose metal layers and evolve over time on an industrial asset without relying on excessive geometry detail. Okay. Without relying on excessive geometric detail? There's a lot of geometry here, though. I mean, it's also because it is the gate, right? But there is a lot of geometry here. I would call this the definition of excessive geometric detail. Like all this stuff, you don't need that geometry here. I don't even know. Do we even have like a poly count for this? I'd be curious. Let me see. Nothing in here. Yeah, no. So we're not going to dive into detail here, right? But a couple of things that I see immediately. A couple of red flags, right? You're saying that this is not made with excessive geometric detail, right? That was the first thing that we brought up. There's a lot of geometry used here. So try to find a way to condense that down to a more manageable amount. Second thing, and probably the most important thing that immediately comes up when I see something like this is you've got four texture sheets. This one down below is the most worrying to me by far. I mean, we'll talk about the top left one. We'll get to that one. This one is the most worrying to me by far because this showcases that you don't even know how to maximize your UV space. Because honestly, what we're looking at here is a giant waste of game resources, right? And it's a huge red flag. It's not the best. I'll go further. Like the UV space management is not the best. This is not usable. I was gonna say that like this little square alone is probably the reason why you're not getting jobs. I mean, there's potentially other reasons as well, but if this is on your portfolio, this is enough for me to not hire you. That's how bad it is. Like straight up. I know that it's very, very confronting, right? But one of the core things that we have to take into account is that game resources are like really, really restricted, right? So we have to make sure that we maximize and squeeze the most amount of them as we can, right? Second topic here, all these individual spikes that come out of it, there must be a better way to have less of them on individual UV space, because a lot of them, no one's going to notice if, let's say, for example, okay, we're going to go broad strokes, right? Let's say this, for example, uses the same UV space and the same texture data as this one. No one's going to notice. So I would say try to find a way to be more optimal with this, because this, again, can be condensed and could even be combined with this one. And you're now saving like one complete UV space, like one texture, right? That saves us a lot of resources as well. The Lost Assassin should bake it. I think this is baked. So that is the thing. It's more about like how you optimize where you need unique information versus where you can reuse information, right? Because I think something like this, making it for a game, I'll give you a limit, one texture. One single texture. And make it work. Right? So that is the thing that I will say about like an asset like this. I want to see this made with like a single texture because honestly, yeah, we need to condense. We need to condense the amount of textures that's being used here, right? So the first priority is always, when it comes to texturing at least, optimizing the amount of UV space that we occupy, right? So making sure that we use as much as we can, because even if you look at these two together, right? These two. If we share texture data and we have, let's say, 20 spikes, just as an example, right? We can then add those 20 spikes. Let's say this is like our UV data, right? Like those 20 spikes, we can add that to this sheet because we have like a lot of space left over where we can just like cram in like a lot of these spikes, right? And that is a way where we can like optimize like how many UVs we use. And then if we do the same thing over here, where not all these, because these are probably all the pipes, right? So we have these pipes that are kind of sticking out because they have like the broken edges on top of it. That's probably all in here. Again, they don't need to be all unique, right? So we can reuse a lot of the textural data as well. And that means that you could turn this into like 1, maybe 2 easily. So that's what I would focus on. Let's see. Let's talk about the presentation. I think the presentation is actually quite decent though. So you have like a clear layout of like base color, roughness, ambient occlusion, normal, metallic. You have like all the things that I do want to see, right? And I think the visuals are decent, right? There's still a lot of contextual wear that I want to see, but I'll just keep it broad, right? Because I don't want to get distracted by the art of it necessarily. But think about, there's like actual some great reference here, right? Think about like how rust rusts over time, right? And you can see where like leakage happens, it then peels away the first layer, that then begins to rust, and the rust spreads over time, and then water drips onto the rust, and the rust creates like these rust leaks, and there's like a lot of interesting textural detail here that is completely missing from your door. Right? So it's thinking about like how different materials get affected over time and how you can translate that to a 3D model, right? And why they happen over time. I think that's something to really implement on a project like this too. Especially because, again, when you're doing a single asset, especially when this is, I would say this is like, I don't know, low to medium complexity, right? Because a lot of it is like very surface detail. The lower in complexity your asset becomes, the more the focus shifts to textures, right? So that's something to keep in mind. So if we have a relatively simple asset, then that means that my expectations of you texturing an asset like go up, right? So that's something to keep in mind. Cool. Substrate material graphs. I don't think these are necessary. I do like the presentation though. And when it comes to the presentation here, it shows that you took time to present them well and you thought about like how to like lay them out and all that kind of stuff. I think that shows really well. So presentation wise, you're actually going in like a really nice direction. I like that you present things in context too, right? So we can actually see it in context. It would actually be kind of cool to potentially, if this is a door, then I would potentially want to see it as a door, you know? So that would be something to think about. But yeah, I would say that some of these breakdowns, so where you break down like your paint stack, right? Like your layer stack in Substance Painter, I don't really see the value in that. Same for your substance material graph, right? Like, I don't know. To me at least, they don't really hold like as much value. Because again, like if I think about it, right? Like if your layering has done well, I can see it on the asset. I don't need you to show me the layer breakdown, because I can get it from just looking at the asset itself, right? I don't care how you did it. I cared about the end result and how good it looks and how convincing it looks, right? Especially as an artist. And we got a question in chat saying, I think it was Ash. Yeah, where to post my ArtStation for review? I just joined. So we have a back catalog of people that we're going to go through. Every week I do 2 people. If this grows out of control, I'll set up like a new event where we can do more people, or we can review more people. But yeah, so that would be a thing. Go to your dashboard, and you can find portfolio reviews on your dashboard. So if you go to overview, you can actually look in your perks, and you can go to portfolio reviews where you can find it. Cool. Okay. Again, presentation here, going really in like the right direction, right? You took the time to really take care of like the presentation, and you made it consistent through like all of it. I think that is definitely going to go into the right direction. Keep thinking about it, keep elevating on top of it, but I think that's going really good. Something like this, very elegant, very clean, you know? And it's consistent with the rest of it. That's good. I like the presentation here. I like what you got on offer with that. When it goes to the artistry, right? Something like this feels very basic because the materials that are used are very simplified or very monotone and like hard to read, right? Because you have a lot of metal surfaces on shiny materials, right? Because it's raining, metal by itself is shiny, and then anything that wasn't shiny, so for example like the bricks and the what is it, like the walkway, you then make them shiny by like adding rain on top of it too, right? So it makes everything feel like everything is just like shiny all the time. So there's no contrast, there's no interest coming from the different material responses that you have in your scene. Where something like this, sure, like the wall is still like pretty wet, but it's becoming like a bit more interesting to look at, right? And I think honestly, at large, this is a case where, and this is something that we discussed during Whip Wednesday, right? Smaller, go for smaller before you go bigger, right? You want to get used to the workflows and how to use them and how to make them look really good before you then tackle like a bigger environment with them, right? But yeah, all the technical stuff is really cool here though. Tintable base color and product recoloring layer, bubbles, and cat animation with motion controls. That is looking cool. If you made that yourself, that's like really nice. Optional palm depth for product layering. Yay. This stuff is really cool to see, you know? Interesting. Okay. I'll throw you another challenge. If you have like all these like automatically playing videos, which are like really cool, don't throw me like a YouTube video in the middle of it, right? Because it breaks the consistency and you're forcing me to click on something where you haven't done that like anywhere else, right? One thing I do want to add in there is the material graph. For something like this, like really technical and like something more interesting and unique, I can see a material graph being useful, right? But, well, would it be useful? What are we getting from a material graph? Because honestly, the stuff that you're showing here is probably like the most interesting part, right? So I would actually I would actually say like maybe not a material graph in here either. Because okay, I'll ask the question to you actually. What do you think a material graph will show that this video is not showing you already? And if you have a good answer to that, add a material graph, right? I mean, feel free to answer it now, but Vishwas is saying that's actually the ArtStation problem. It was just not letting me add those two videos. I've even mailed them about it, but I couldn't resolve the issue. I think it is literally because this is like 1 minute and 1 second, right? So it might just be like too long because there's probably a limit on like how long they can get. Same thing here, right? It's over a minute. That's probably it. Because all the other ones are like below a minute, right? So maybe try making them shorter than a minute. Help. I should just saying to show material optimization knowledge. Potentially. But I would argue then that you can have that on the video and say like, hey, this is my material instruction count. This is like how long it takes to render on the GPU, all that kind of stuff, right? Rather than showing a material graph, because do we have an example here? Okay. We are going to be looking something up, right? I'll give you a visual example, if I can. All right, so this is not a good example, but we'll just have to deal with it. Oh, actually, let's go for something like this. So when we talk about like material optimization knowledge, right? You're saying what I think could be pretty interesting to show, but what you're basically talking about is you want to showcase a full image for this, right? That's the only thing that I care about with material optimization, right? The amount of texture pass instructions, like the amount of base shader instructions, all that kind of stuff. But you are showing like the whole thing. So there's actually no point showing the material graph whatsoever. Because if you have a very complex material, then showing an image of it is not going to be readable anyway, right? So I think it's better if you want to then showcase material optimization knowledge that you just showcase it in a way like, do we have an example here? Oh, whatever. Let's see. I think it's better to then showcase like something like this, right? Where you have like a little overlay saying like, hey, look, this is my instruction count. This is what I kept in mind. This is what I did, right? And then you just show the visuals. I think that's like more impactful than showcasing the material graph that nobody can read. If that makes sense, right? Because again, everything that we add to our portfolio needs to add value to it, right? Same argument that I have with the references, right? Showcasing references on your portfolio, then you're already saying like, hey, there's something wrong with the work. Let me show you, let me see your references, right? Because yeah, that's usually the reason why I ask people for the references, right? If I know that something is wrong, I want to see the steps that they took to get to that conclusion, and then we can talk about it, right? And I think maybe there's some argument to be made for like texture optimization knowledge potentially, but there's a better way to showcasing it than just showing the material graph. It's basically what I'm getting at. Puddle layer, because like some of this stuff is like really interesting, right? You've built like a lot of cool stuff with this environment. I would say that I could definitely make the argument that this is more like tech focused potentially, right? Because you're spending a lot of time talking about the shaders that you've built, the unique tools that you've built, all that kind of stuff. So I can definitely see where the technical approach now comes from, which is pretty interesting. But then we're at like this weird crossroads, right? Where if you want to become more technical, then it's like, okay, do you know Python? You know, do you know like any of the scripting languages? And can we take that a step further? Because what we're doing here is sort of like it's sort of like environment art plus, you know? You're trying to do cool environment art and then you add like a bunch of tech stuff on top of it. So yeah. It's all to say that like I have conflicting feelings about where you want to go in the future, right? Because you're showcasing an environment, but it seems like the focus has been on the tools within the environment, not the environment itself, if you get what I mean. So that might be something to take into account. Because what I'm getting from this is that the art is okay-ish, right? And then you've done some like pretty interesting tech stuff on top of it. Right, so it feels like the focus is almost not the environment, it's more the tools that you build around it. Is it good to show you have the plus when you want to be an environment artist? So this is in reference to like all the tech and all the tools on top of it, right? It only matters if the art is good. Because if you want to be an environment artist, the art needs to be good. If you can make like a bunch of fancy, cool tools, the reality of you getting hired for them as an environment artist are almost like impossible. Right? Because as an environment artist, you don't spend time on building tools. You just don't. Maybe I can see you working in like a smaller company where you have to be more of a 3D generalist. You might have to build tools and all that kind of stuff. But from all the people that I've ever worked with in a 3D environment artist capacity, I think I've worked with one person who built occasional tools for the pipeline. That's it. I can't really think of like a lot of other people in my case. That's right. It's a job for a tech artist so that the environment artist can do what they do best. Yeah, especially in bigger developments, right? And I think then you need to ask yourself a question here, Vishwas, is like, where do you see yourself focusing, right? Because it might be that you have like a real interest in the tech stuff, but then you have to do more tech stuff rather than art stuff, right? Yeah, that's something to consider, something to at least think about. Ashish is saying the way that I did material layering in my project in Unreal is really heavy right now, and I think it uses a new material in every vertex paint. Oh, I have no clue. I have no clue. There's so much specific things, right, to your material setup. That could be the case there, but yeah. Hey, Fair. Good to see you. Good morning. Let's go through some of the other stuff here. 3D environment artist for Grim, a team of 9. Okay, so this is a team-based project. Cool. So we can now go back to the CV, right? Like the part where I said that like this stuff is more, this is more portfolio worthy. Grim then in this case could be a case where you could still add that because it was team-based, right? It's something that definitely more intrigues me than anything. Yeah, I think if that is the case, then I would potentially go more into the tech art realm than anything else. If that is something that you love pursuing, right? But then I also want to see what you can bring to the table in terms of how do you then go above and beyond what other environment artists are doing, right? Because I can build shaders as well. I can do simple geometry node scripts as well. How are you then going to build things that are going to be sort of the bridge between programmers and artists, right? And that can mean a lot of things. Something like this is cool, you know? Like a ghost silhouette material for the possession system in the game. I think that's cool. So it definitely seems that you want to go more into that like kind of realm, you know? Yeah. You focused on asset creation, optimization, and material development. Let's have a look. Because yeah, the art here is okay, right? It's very, very functional. I would say there's a lot of work to do on the proportions and yeah, on the specific layering, right? On the logical layering and making sure that like they read like really well. Because if you look at the assets by themselves, it's pretty basic, right? It's just functional. Let's see, and this posted last year. For your wireframe. This stuff doesn't matter. Because this doesn't really show us anything, right? This could be cool. This could be cool. I would love to see it better presented, right? Like taking the elements that you showcase here and making sure that I know which element you're referring to. Because right now, what is happening is that I don't even know, like, where is this, right? Like, what am I looking at? Sure, like I can see like the Blender outline, but even just having like a simple overlay saying like, hey, this is in green, and then the second texture is in red, right? Doing that separation can help a lot. Because again, with your portfolio, what you're trying to do is you're trying to impress people artistically, right? So you're trying to make an impression there. And then with your breakdowns, what you're doing is you're trying to give your viewers or like people that are watching your portfolio the information that they need in the most concise and direct way possible, right? So it's all about reducing friction. So if you're asking me to reverse engineer a prop that you made, it's already gone off the cliff and I'm already clicking away. So make it super easy for me to look at something like this and be like, oh, that's where that is used, that's where that is used. Cool, got it. Let's see. Yeah, you got the presentation in context. I think individual layering, like if you want to take this to the next level, I want to see the foil like not being just a tube, but like the foil actually has like an impact on the geometry, right? On the silhouette. And I want to see more context-based dirt and grime, right? Because right now it just feels like generic kind of generator dirt and all that kind of stuff. It just looks generic, right? So I want to see more attention to detail if this is something that you want to pursue, right? Right. Now we get to the end. Let me see. There's challenges here as well. I'm curious. Boo. I mean, I get it. Challenges are always hard. Okay. So what are my thoughts on the complete thing? I think there's a lot of confusion going on here, right? That is my gut instinct right now, is that you do a prop, you do a team-based project, you do a lot of tech stuff, and then you do a prop again. But it's like the artistry in the prop lacks a lot of like finesse and a lot of like fundamental knowledge, right? Whereas your bigger environment art stuff seems to be more focused on the tech behind it rather than the environment itself, right? The environment art here looks decent, right? But it feels very much in function of the tools that you're building. So that is one thing that really stuck out to me. And then the individual prop art is decent, right? But can definitely use like an additional push, right? Additional push to like attention to detail and stuff. So yeah, I think the biggest question from our conversation as well is that as a company, I do not know where I want to put you at this point, right? If I were to pretend that I was a company at this point, like looking to hire people, because it's like there's a lot of stuff happening, right? And especially for AAA, I want you to see like hyper focus on one thing and one thing only. So if that is tech, that's good. If it's props, that's good. If it's environment, that's good, right? But it needs to be like one thing. And I don't really get that sense just yet. So let's see. So the couple of things that stood out to me is, as I said, is confusion about like where you want to go with your work, right? So it's like tech art, question mark, environment art, question mark, or prop art, right? Sure, like a lot of the tools that were built for that single environment, they looked really good, but I think that like stole the main focus away from the environment rather on the tools. What I would recommend, okay, on this crossroads that we're at right now, right? If you want to go for environment art, I would pick a concept that you really like and just focus on that, but really focus on the attention to detail when it comes to the materials, the proportions of the assets, the storytelling there as well. You know, like that's what I want to see. Because even in something like this, it is cool, but like, what's the story here, right? Like, what is happening? Like, what makes this interesting? Because it feels much like, and you'll see this in Cyberpunk actually as well. It feels like generic Cyberpunk stuff. You know, it just feels like filler. But for your portfolio, you don't really want to make filler, you know? You want to make like the visually interesting stuff that tells a story, you know? So I would focus on that. So if you're focusing on environment art, I want to see I want to see storytelling, more attention to detail, on your textures / materials. I also want to have a better understanding of where to look, right? So that's usually called like rest versus detail. Or your focal point, right? Because again, as an environment artist, we need to be able, in a very much gameplay driven sense, to like drive a person from like point A to B without like pointing like arrows like at the bottom of your screen, right? So how do we then guide people, right? That's through composition, that's through colors, that's through shapes. That's what we want to focus on. Because yeah, hireability at this point, I think, yeah, in terms of presentation, I think you're doing a really good job, right? Like some of this stuff, I saw that you took the time with the presentation and all that kind of stuff. I guess we're not really talking about presentation yet, but like, yeah, your hireability like suffers because I don't really know where to put you at this point, right? So pretty low hireability at this point, which is just you do some stuff right, because your CV was like well laid out. There was some like issues with your portfolio being on the CV and all that kind of stuff. You're easy to contact, but like the main thing is just I don't really know where to put you in a company at this point, right? I don't really see that focus. Our presentation was actually pretty good. I really liked the presentation. You really took your time with these videos. You really did like a little bit of extra attention to like making like some nice animations, all that kind of stuff. Sure, it might seem like it's inconsequential, right? But all that stuff does matter. Like really nice showcases. There's potentially a lot of it, you know? There's a lot of stuff to go through, so maybe it can be condensed, and something like this, your mirror board. If you're scrolling through this, again, what are you trying to show me? Right? Because I don't know what you want me to show. This is just like, hey, look, this is all the stuff that I collected. But that's not the interesting part, right? So yeah, some stuff can be condensed here for sure. But yeah, stuff like this. I'm just missing. You've got the wireframe, right? I'm just missing the poly count and where some of the, in this case, where some of the textures are used. Yeah, and then some of this stuff like doesn't need to be here, right? It's again, where's the value in like showcasing like your layer stack? Because maybe if this was like an 80 level article and you're showing like the layer stack and how to build it up over time, that might be valuable. But just showcasing like this here on your portfolio doesn't really add a lot of value. It's more about the final product and yeah, showcasing wireframe and all that kind of stuff, right? So presentation, let's go for like an equal 5. Artistry, I'm gonna rate that pretty low, but that is because I feel like that's where the confusion kind of hits, right? Because I just get the feeling that the focus is more on the tools and all that kind of stuff. And the techniques, they're actually pretty decent. So let's go for a 5 in this case. Fishwise is saying, believe me, I've been asking that same question to myself, whether I want to explicitly do tech art or environment art because I want to make good art. Yeah, and I think that's a difficult thing to do, right? But especially on your portfolio, you want to showcase one or the other, right? You can still do, let's say, if you focus yourself on environment art, just as an example, you can still do a bunch of cool tech on the side, right? I make a bunch of cool tech on the side as well. But does that mean that I want to do it for a full-time job? No. Because I just like doing it as in function of the environment, right? That's what I'm saying. Maybe the opposite works for you because I'm getting a sense, and this, I don't know, this depends on you, right? Like maybe I'm reading into this, but it feels almost like you're making the environment just to showcase the tools. That's at least a feeling that I'm getting. Whether or not that is true, that is something for you to decide though. You have to do some questioning for yourself and maybe some experimentation, right? I think what could also be interesting. Well, if I were to look at your work in general, right? It seems to me that you have a lot more fun with the tech art behind it, or like the tech behind it, than the art itself. But again, that's my assumption. Right, cool. So yeah, definitely an interesting take. It is something to think about, right? It is something to think about. It's not an easy choice. What I will give as a recommendation, I would say do smaller projects, right? Whether that's tech art focused or environment art focused. Do smaller projects and really build a high quality, like something high quality around it, right? Because I know in the beginning with your big cyberpunk inspired scene, That was massive in the beginning, right? That was massive. We shrunk that down, but I think there's still some remnants of it being somewhat too big, where if you just make something like this, right? This little corner with the vending machine, this could be like a freaking amazing portfolio piece. It doesn't need to be this massive thing always, right? Focus on smaller, but higher quality. And do the same thing for the tool, right? Let's say if you have a, I don't know, let's go for, just as an example, you had this cool like shader here that like turned the world into like this ghostly stuff, right? You don't have to make the whole, let's see here. Yeah. You don't have to make the whole environment yourself. You can literally just take like one of the free packs on Unreal Engine Marketplace, or like Fab, I guess, and then just use that to then build your own materials on top of it, right? Because right now I feel like this is showcasing something, but it's not finished. And like Stefan is saying, this feels a bit chaotic. Yeah, I think I agree, and that's where I want to see either like really high quality tech art stuff or really high quality environment art stuff, right? And sure, you can maybe switch between the two, and then maybe you'll get a job, but then once you get a job, you'll still have to choose. It's highly likely that you'll have to choose between the two. So, cool. Thanks, Yuslash. Yeah, some really good potential though. Some really good potential. Like, I know that I kind of suck at this, but I like to leave. I'll try to leave it on a high note, right? That I like where this is going. I like the promise that you bring to the table, right? And the study you're going through now, where you're asking yourself the same question that I'm asking you right now, it's a really important thing, right? But also that doesn't mean that you have to be stuck in it forever, right? Sometimes it's better to take action on the thing that immediately feels good, and then, I don't know, pivot at a later time. Because let's say in your case, you do get a job as a tech artist, right? And then at a certain point, you're like, oh God, I kind of underestimated all of this. I don't want to be doing this anymore. You can then still, like, on the side, like, pivot to environment art again, right? And you will have a solid base already to start building from, which is great, right? Because you're not losing those skills that you've built up, right? It might take you a little bit to get into it, but I feel like it's riding a bike, you know? And the same can happen in the opposite way as well. Where if you get a job as an environment artist, and then you want to later down switch to tech art, you might be able to do that internally, externally, whatever, right? So there's options, and I don't want you to look at it as like, ooh, I don't want to choose, so I'm just going to do both things and then hope that I get a job. Because I think still it is better to be, I mean, we talk about this a lot, right? The T-shaped skill set, where that basically means that like most of your skills are like mediocre, but you have one skill that really jumps above like all the rest. And that skill is usually what gets you hired, right? In this case, if we want to simplify it, it's like your tech art, let's say, right? If you really double down on that and you make high quality stuff, then you'll get a job in that. And then you can like expand again and like, I don't know, do more environment art stuff. Hope that was helpful. Feel free to ask any like upcoming or like any additional questions. Because yeah, it is an important topic. Ashish is saying, I feel like I'm at the crossroads as well. I have a good environment art portfolio, but I recently made a small level for an art test and really enjoyed planning it and creating the flow of it. Definitely helpful. Thank you so much, Tim. Yeah, no worries, man. No worries. And best of luck. With whatever you choose, you got it, dude. You got it. You show the ambition, you show the passion. It's there, right? You just have to channel it into the right direction. Ashish, that's actually an interesting thing. I think there's a lot of value, and I've been thinking about this more and more and more. There's a lot of value of having somewhat of an understanding of how to create good level design, right? I learned a lot of my level design when I was in the industry already, because my first job I didn't have to do any level design, right? But if you then want to work on like big AAA stuff, it's good to also have an understanding, and I can set you apart from other people. I was having a chat with one of my level designer buddies that I used to work with, and he was telling me that he always really enjoyed working with me because I did have a genuine interest and I did have somewhat of an understanding of level design, and that made for better conversations, right? Because we were speaking the same language, and he would try to do the same thing with art as well, and I think that was like really interesting. So yeah, it can definitely be a bonus. And I was actually thinking about like doing a little write-up or like a little bit of a presentation about what I want to see in an environment, right? And I'm thinking about the structure in my head, and like level design knowledge is something that a lot of people aren't showing yet, but is actually something that has really, really, really helped me. But I'll need to think about like how I'm gonna break that down, because I do also don't want to be like, hey, look, level design could be good for you, cool, and then just leave it at that, right? I want to give you like a bunch of resources and stuff too. Yeah, let's have a couple more questions. So if you have any questions, I've got like a decade of experience. That sounds weird to say, but I have like a decade of experience in the games industry. So if you want to ask me anything, feel free to ask. Starting with Quinton. Let's see. Where was the question? I like learning Houdini for the procedural modeling. Is it better to focus on standard modeling? Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Uncle Tim. Uncle Tim. Oh my god, makes me sound so old. Thanks, Fair. Appreciate it. No, it's when you're modeling, especially in the beginning, you don't want to get fancy. You don't want to learn Houdini and all that kind of stuff for procedural modeling. That is again, that's like a plus coming on top of it, right? You have people that can really that are really good with standard modeling, and then they can also do some procedural modeling on top of it, which is good, right? But you need that base of standard modeling, because I'm trying to think about. I have never used procedural modeling in my workflow ever in a professional development. And I was trying to think if I actually knew people who did. And I don't think so. I really don't think so. I think there are tools that could be built within Houdini that could speed up the workflow, right? But that is usually set up by like a tech artist that then builds a tool and then we just use it, right? Stuff like that definitely exists and we interface with it on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, straight up procedural modeling, like only doing that to create like, I don't know, let's say chairs, right? Chairs usually just get outsourced as like the individual assets. So yeah, I can't really see a good, when I think about like procedural modeling in like this very narrow sense, right? Where it's to create like individual assets for a game, I don't really see that much benefit compared to traditional workflows. Yeah. When you create art for a company, you're allowed to add it to your portfolio, but the quality isn't the same as the rest of your portfolio. Do you still add it to your portfolio to showcase professional work? Yes. The reality is that because there are so many restrictions, both from platform, there are so many restrictions when it comes to game development, when it comes to where you're going to output it, right? Think about the platform, right? If your game needs to run on both like Xbox X and S at this stage, that means that there's going to be certain concessions that have to be made when it comes to the art of the game, right? Because we have to cram it into like some lower spec stuff. Let's even take the Switch, right? If you're trying to include the Switch in it, yeah. There's like scalability for sure, but that also has like an impact on how dense you can, for example, like set dress an area, right? But to your point, yeah, always add it to your portfolio, because your professional work is not necessarily a showcase of the quality standards. It's more a showcase of that you can work within a team and that you've worked on a big AAA development or like, I don't know, like any development at all, right? And that has a completely different value compared to your personal work, right? So always add it in there. Even if you know that you can do better than with your personal work, right? So for example, I'll give an example, right? And this is a striking example. So let's say you are an environment artist that focuses on like AAA stuff, right? You go for like really high quality stuff that you want to make. And then for whatever reason, like a mobile studio hires you, and then you launch your first mobile game. I think there's still a good argument to be made for you just saying like, hey, look, we've launched this. This is my professional game development career, right? Sure. Your portfolio is saying I want to get into AAA, but I am also like working in the games industry to then ground out like some of the like soft skills, right? So working with a team, being dependable, being flexible because you're showcasing two art styles. There's a lot of value that even that sort of dichotomy brings to your portfolio. Well, I'm probably going to put my project on hold then and do a standard one. Yeah. I think that could be a good thing, Quentin. In general, right, there's the keep it simple rule, right? Like the KISS principle. I think depending on where you go from like 1S or like a double S, you know, you can call it like keep it simple stupid. Or keep it stupid simple. That's also something that people say. But oftentimes there's a lot of value in like not trying to do the fancy thing, but just doing the thing that works. Justin is asking, planning a project based on an existing concept. The problem is looking around, I haven't found anything that piques my interest in terms of narrative. Any advice on how to overcome this mental block? So here's gonna be a weird thing, right? This is gonna be weird coming from a person who always says to like work from a concept. I rarely do that. Because I never really had an issue with like artistic block or anything related to that. And I'm not trying to sound like, oh my god, I'm high and mighty and I don't have like issues with creating art ever, right? Because that's not true. But I think my mind was always in overdrive, and my issue was actually trying to stay the course with like one thing that I was building at this point. That's usually the issue that I had. There's a lot out there, just nothing I can use to contribute to my goal. What is your goal for the project? Because also, like, I know that I talk a lot about using an existing concept, right? But you as an environment artist can actually just make your own concept like really, really quickly as well. Let me share. I don't know if I still have it on hand. Let me see. Who was I talking to about this? This is from a while ago that I was doing a mentorship. I'll actually do something else. I'll go to Miro because we have set something up on the team challenge Miro boards as well. This can be helpful for this. I'm just gonna pick a random team. Oh, there we go. So if you are not inspired by like anything that's already out there, right? And if you're struggling with that, something like this can work. And I'll show you the shitty example first, right? And I want to be open. This is my example. So this is something that I made. I just wanted to showcase that you don't have to draw good. You don't have to be like a fantastical like 2D artist. This is just like, hey, look, I like the street. I like the creative juices that get flowing when I see the street, right? And then I'm like, but I don't want to have like just some boring old cart here. So I want to have a pottery stand with a market cart that kind of looks like this. This is how the pottery is going to look like. This is what the floor is going to look like. This is what the gate in the back is going to look like. And this is what the houses are going to look like. That's it. You can literally just be like, hey, look, I like the layout from the street, right? It's like nice, closed in like an enclosed space. And then I just like pick a bunch of random, like a bunch of other images that I'm going to be like, hey, look, this stand, this pottery stand, that's going to be my focus point. I want it to look like this. The market cart, I want it to look like this. The floor is going to look like this. And then you just change the individual things that you don't like, right? You could even do the same thing with pre-existing concepts, right? Where you take a concept where you're like, I really like the composition, but I don't like the way that the story is structured or the main focal point or something like that, right? You can swap things out and do like a quick photo bash. Lydia is saying, well, my team and I photo bashed elements are just elements together from different concepts. Yeah, 100% viable. And that's also what's happening here, right? So this is from like an older team challenge. This is from, oh my God, from the 4th team challenge that we've ever done. So this is pretty old at this point. It's from like Nightmare Garden. But this is literally just like taking pre-existing things from like other games and then just being like, okay, I'm just going to put our own spin on it, you know? I want to have like this ruin that's overgrown with like a bunch of mushrooms. And it's more about the idea, right? And looking at something like this, and then coming up with a story is really easy, right? But you can build something like this in like, I don't know, an hour, you know? You can make it really quickly. You can do this in 5 minutes. Come on. The longest thing that's going to take you to do here is just like finding all the images. Relevance to studios work. I want to work at like Larian on CDPR. Yeah. Well, you just have to look at like what they do and what they're known for, right? And then try to distill that into something that you can make. But I think like the way that I try to approach it is that if you already have like a really interesting narrative, right? And you just pick something that you want to make, what inspires you, right, is always an important thing. There's still like this super relevant talk that I did, which can be found in like our live stream category. Let me see if I can quickly find it. But yeah, there's still a talk about like how to create like environments, right? Like how to start from scratch and like build your own environments. I think that's still super relevant. So let me quickly showcase. Oh, it isn't listed? Why did I do that? Oh no. Oh no, it's because like the stream like fucked up multiple times. So there's still a lot of relevancy in this talk here. I think that's the one. Let me quickly check. Yeah. There's honestly like still a lot of relevancy to like this talk. Like how to start your own environment project, right? Because a lot of it, like if you really struggle with finding a concept, maybe you just have to look inside yourself, right? And just be like, hey, what do I like? Because there might be an indication that you're not focusing on the right things. And that could work as well. And then you can like really quickly like kit bash something like that yourself. I always struggle with finding the perfect concept, and then finding 4 other artists who've already done it. Well, there's 2 issues with that, right? It's good that you bring that up though, Zoe, because I think a lot of people struggle with the same thing. First, is looking for the perfect concept. Just get that out of your head, right? Finding a good enough concept that you can then take like certain pieces out and replace them with something that you find better. That's probably the way that you want to go. And then finding 4 other artists who've already done it. No one cares. No one cares. Just do it. If that is the thing that you want to do, I wouldn't even go looking up who's already done it. Don't care about that. Because also, like, we look at it, like, usually the way that we look at it is from like, oh my god, they've already done it. So there's an assumption made for, let's say, a hiring artist out there, where they're going to look at your work and you've done, I don't know, you've done a concept that is pretty similar to like those 4 other people, right? They have no idea that those 4 other people exist. Only you do. Maybe you'll end up in a situation where they know the person that made it or something like that, and they're like, oh my god, it's inspired by this. That's cool. And that's it, you know? Just don't overthink that. Don't overthink that. Because again, like we as environment artists are not the people who design things from scratch. That is not necessarily like our job, right? I think for us, the most value that we can add to a project is that we can elevate pre-existing things, right? So we take a concept art and then we're like, ooh, what if we make this tower like twice the size? You know, like really make it stand out, something like that. I wanna take your advice as well and create a small, interesting experience, but nothing small piques my interest right now. That is an interesting point, because I mean, so I'll give you the choice, right? And I probably took the hard way out of this as well. If nothing small piques your interest at the moment, and you are going to keep continuing big stuff and failing on it, right? Or doing like, I don't know, not even an adequate job on it. That is usually like the comparison that I make, right? Like you can spend like, let's say, I don't know, let's say 2 months working on something small that you can really polish up and has like a lot of value to your portfolio. Or you can choose to spend like 6 months to a year potentially learning a bunch of new stuff and like working on an environment that maybe is mediocre, right? For the vast majority of people, that big of a scope is like way too much for what they can take on, and it ends up just being like a mediocre project. That's the thing, right? Like if you have the choice there. You have the choice there as like you can go for the long and difficult route, but then you also have to realize that you're not going to get into the industry in like a year, right? That is your choice. That's why I'm a big favor of like small experiments, because even is I'll challenge the assumption that like if you don't get inspired by small stuff, you could then even look at the big stuff and make something small out of it. Right? Because let's say, for example, I'm inspired by like, I don't know, this big concept art from Kingdom Come Deliverance, right? Where it's like a big open field, there's like a medieval mountain and like a medieval castle in the background and all that kind of stuff. Just condense it down to the smallest thing, right? Like make like a building first. Do that. Make it look really, really good. And then you can build up towards the big thing, right? And that's probably like more success guaranteed in that workflow than trying to do the big stuff all at once when you're not ready for it yet. Does that make sense? Because if we have infinite time, then yeah, keep doing the big stuff, right? But the reality is that like most of us don't, right? Like at a certain point, we need to put like money on the table. I don't know. Does this all make sense? Or am I being too confronting about this? Calzar is saying yeah. I don't know which part though. About the too confronting, or if it makes sense. Lily is saying, a while ago, I also had a portfolio review, and one tip I got was to add some hard surface to my portfolio. Would a prop to demonstrate hard surface be enough, or should I do a diorama sci-fi corridor? If you want to showcase like hard surface, I think just doing a prop is more than enough. You know? It's more than enough. Oh, Ashish, I didn't see your follow-up. Because you were saying nothing from small things like pique my interest. So what I do is take compositions from concept art and use real world environments. Yeah, yeah. I think kit bashing stuff like that together is really really good, right? So keep doing that. Sorry, I feel like I've been rambling or like giving you a bunch of shit when you have like a bunch of really good ideas. Looking at it now, but hey, I need to read more. You know. Let's see. But yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy. Like there's always a push and pull, right, between like what you should be creating for the industry and what you want to create for yourself. There's always a push and pull between the two. So yeah, it is not easy. Right. I think I'm gonna leave it there. I am gonna do some more editing because we have a bunch of stuff for the course to edit. I do appreciate you all being here though. Like it's amazing to see like 50 people just being here, chilling out with me. Unfortunately, I can't make this stream any longer because I do need to do a bunch more editing work. But yeah, maybe next week, we'll see. But I'll keep you all in the loop. I'll just thank you all for being here. Thank you for the people that got their portfolio reviewed. So yeah, this was a really good short stream. Yeah, quote unquote short stream. Good luck with editing. Thank you, Lily. Appreciate it. Oh, Deniz. Thank you. First time being here. Really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot. You're welcome. Thank you so much. And Gal saying thanks, Tim. No worries. Happy to help. So I'm gonna head on off. I wish you all a nice afternoon. And I'll pick up some other good conversations in the community chat as well. So just a reminder for people that are here, that don't know what else we do. We also have a Discord community that you can join as well. We throw like a bunch of good resources at your head if you join. So if you want to get hit in the head by like a bunch of good resources, I guess join up. All right, people, have a nice day and see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Quentin's got to find a small scale environment now. Yeah, you got this, Quentin. Do it. And like we said, if you can't find one, just build yourself a quick one, you know? You got this.